What happens when a human diplomat accidentally kills an alien champion and suddenly owns 6 elite warrior women? And why is an ancient crystal reacting to his touch when it's supposed to be impossible? This is the story of Kai Mercer, the man who cut a warlord in two and changed the fate of an entire galaxy. But first he has to survive what he just won. Rain hammered against the shuttle's viewport like bullets as Kai Mercer descended through the storm clouds of Vardoon Prime. Below him, the alien fortress city of Vardoon Citadel sprawled across black volcanic rock, its crystalline towers gleaming like fangs in the lightning flashes. Just a routine trade negotiation, Kai muttered, checking his diplomatic credentials one last time. What could go wrong? Famous last words. The Terran Diplomatic Corps had sent him here to settle a mining dispute between human colonists and the Vardoon war clans. Simple enough. The Vardoon were known for their honor codes and rigid protocols, but they respected strength and direct communication. Kai had done this dance before with dozens of alien cultures. He just hadn't counted on the weather. His shuttle bucked violently as crosswinds caught it, forcing him to overshoot the designated landing pad by nearly half a kilometer. Through the sheets of rain, he could see armored figures moving across the Citadel's courtyard, their ceremonial weapons glinting. A formal reception committee waiting in perfect formation despite the storm. Great. He was already late-soaked and about to make his entrance like a drunk pilot at a funeral. The shuttle's landing thrusters screamed as Kai fought to set her down on what looked like a secondary platform. Steam hissed up from the superheated stone as he finally touched down, the ship rocking on its struts. Not his smoothest landing, but he was in one piece. That was about to change. The moment Kai stepped out of his shuttle, he knew something was wrong. The Vardoon Honor Guard hadn't moved from their positions in the main courtyard. They stood rigid as statues even as rain poured off their angular armor. At their head, a tall female figure in obsidian battle dress watched him with eyes like chips of amber ice. Commander Velshara. He'd studied her file during the journey. Noble-born, third-generation war leader, veteran of the Rim conflicts. Beautiful in that sharp, dangerous way that reminded you why her people had conquered half the sector before the peace treaties. Right now, she looked ready to conquer him. Terran, her voice carried across the courtyard, amplified by her armor's speakers. Even through the translation matrix, he could hear the contempt. You dishonor this gathering with your theatrical arrival. Kai raised his hands, rainwater streaming down his diplomatic uniform. Commander Velshara, I apologize for the delay. The storm forced me to adjust my approach vector. I meant no disrespect. A murmur ran through the gathered Vardoon warriors. Velshara's hand dropped to the curved blade at her hip, a weapon that looked like it could cut through starship hull plating. Unauthorized approach to sacred ground, she said, her amber eyes narrowing. Failure to follow prescribed ceremonial protocols. Disruption of the Rainrite gathering. Each word hit like a hammer blow. These are grave insults, human. Look, there's been a misunderstanding. Kai stepped forward, hands still raised peacefully. I'm here under diplomatic immunity as a peace envoy. The trade compact clearly states, the trade compact, Velshara's voice dripped with disdain, does not supersede clan law on Vardoon soil. You have brought shame upon this ceremony, Terran. Honor demands satisfaction. That's when the champion stepped forward. He was massive even by Vardoon standards. 8 feet of scarred muscle wrapped in ceremonial combat armor, carrying a weapon that looked like a cross between a sword and a plasma cannon. His face was hidden behind a skull-shaped mask, but his eyes burned with the fervor of a true believer. I am Korvash the Bladeborn, his voice boomed across the courtyard. Champion of the Velshara bloodline. I claim right of blood judgment against this pale weakling who mocks our traditions. The other warriors began to chant, a low thrumming sound that made Kai's teeth ache. This was spiraling out of control fast. One moment he was landing in a storm, the next he was facing some kind of ritual combat because of a navigation error. Commander, please, Kai tried one more time. I didn't come here to fight. I came to find a peaceful solution to the mining dispute. Surely we can work this out without... Korvash's weapon ignited with a sound like tearing metal. The blade portion glowed white hot while energy crackled along its edges. Peace is for the weak, human. You will face me in combat or you will be marked as a coward and cast from our lands." Velshara said nothing, but her slight nod sealed Kai's fate. Here's the thing about being a diplomatic envoy. They don't send you to negotiate with alien warrior cultures unless you can handle yourself. Kai Mercer might have preferred words to weapons, but he'd spent 10 years as a Marine before joining the diplomatic corps. His service record was classified, but it included some very interesting operations in very dangerous places. Still, he really didn't want to hurt anyone today. "If this is the only way," Kai said quietly, reaching for the combat blade at his side. It was a simple weapon, molecular-edge steel with a basic power cell. Nothing fancy, nothing that should have been able to match a Vardoon champion's ceremonial weapon. The crowd pressed closer, forming a circle around the two combatants. Rain continued to pour down, turning the stone courtyard slick and treacherous. Lightning split the sky overhead, casting everything in stark, violent shadows. Korvash raised his weapon with both hands, energy crackling along its length. "For the honor of Clan Velshara," he roared, bringing the massive blade down in an overhead strike that should have split Kai from skull to sternum. It would have, too, if Kai had been where the champion expected him to be. Instead, Kai had shifted half a step to the left, letting the superheated weapon whistle past his ear. In the same fluid motion, he drew his own blade and struck once precisely at the junction where Korvash's armor plates met at the waist. The molecular edge passed through Vardoon battle steel like it was paper. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Korvash stood frozen, his weapon embedded in the stone where Kai had been standing. His eyes, visible through his skull mask, were wide with confusion. Then the champion's upper and lower halves separated with a wet sound that was somehow audible even over the thunder. The silence that followed was deafening. Kai stood in the rain, his blade clean and already sheathed, staring down at what he'd done. He'd aimed for a disabling strike, something to end the fight quickly without permanent harm. But Vardoon anatomy was different from human. What should have been a minor cut had instead, "By the burning stars," someone whispered. Commander Velshara stared at the remains of her champion, her face cycling through emotions too complex for Kai to read. Shock, grief, and something else. Something that looked almost like fear. Then slowly, incredibly, she dropped to one knee. "The champion is dead," she said, her voice carrying across the silent courtyard. "Blood debt is claimed. The old laws are satisfied." Around the circle, her elite guard began to kneel as well. 5 warriors in gleaming armor, each one a veteran of countless battles, bowing their heads in the pouring rain. Kai realized with growing horror that he'd just won a lot more than a simple combat trial. He'd won them. Kai stared at the kneeling warriors, rain washing the champion's blood across the ancient stones. This couldn't be happening. One minute he was a diplomat trying to negotiate a mining contract, the next he was standing over a corpse while alien nobility bowed to him. "Get up," he said, his voice barely audible over the storm. "All of you just get up." Commander Velshara raised her head, amber eyes meeting his. There was no defiance there now, only a hollow acceptance that made Kai's stomach twist. "We cannot," she said simply. "The blood debt is claimed. The old ways demand. I don't care about your old ways." Kai stepped forward, then stopped himself. Getting emotional wouldn't help anyone. "Look, I'm sorry about your champion. I didn't mean for this to happen, but I'm not your owner or your master or whatever this is supposed to be." That's when the crowd parted and Kai got his first look at just how deep he'd stepped into it. The figure approaching through the rain was ancient, even by Vardoon standards. His armor was more ceremony than protection, covered in symbols that seemed to shift and writhe in the lightning flashes. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. "I am Elder Korveth, keeper of the old laws," the figure intoned. "Witness to blood right and bond claim. The champion Korvash has fallen in lawful combat. His death debt passes to his sworn charges." Kai felt like he was drowning in ritual and tradition he didn't understand. "Elder, with respect, I'm a Terran diplomat. I don't know anything about your blood debts or ignorance does not negate law outsider." The elder's eyes were milky with age, but they seemed to see right through him. Korvash was shield sworn to Commander Velshara and her battle sisters. In death, his obligation transfers to the one who claimed his life. You now hold their loyalty and companionship until the debt is satisfied. Companionship. Kai's voice cracked slightly. Around the circle, he could see other Vardoon warriors watching with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely contained outrage. This was clearly not a normal occurrence. The bonds of protection and service, Elder Corveth continued as if Kai hadn't spoken. They are yours to command, yours to guide, yours to. The old alien's lipless mouth curved in what might have been a smile. Cherish should you prove worthy. One of the kneeling guards, a fierce-looking warrior with ritual scars covering her arms, spoke without raising her head. I am Thyra of the Blood Moon clan. I accept the transfer of bond oath. Zara Swiftblade, said another. The debt is acknowledged. Kiara the Shieldbreaker. Nyx of the Stellar Guard. Vara Ironheart. 5 voices, 5 warriors binding themselves to him with words he couldn't take back. Velshara remained silent, but her knuckles were white where she gripped her weapon. This is insane, Kai muttered, running a hand through his rain-soaked hair. I can't just own people. I won't. Elder Corveth's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air around them. The other Vardoon warriors stepped back slightly, and Kai realized he'd just said something very dangerous. You would refuse the blood debt, the elder asked quietly. I would refuse to enslave anyone, yes. A collective intake of breath from the assembled crowd. Velshara's head snapped up, her eyes wide, with something that looked like panic. She said urgently. You don't understand what you're saying. If you refuse the bond claim, we are marked as oath-broken, exiled, cast out from all the clans, all worlds under Vardoon protection. That's better than being slaves, Kai shot back. Is it? Elder Corveth's voice carried a hint of genuine curiosity. Tell me, outsider, what do you know of exile among the Vardoon? Kai realized he was about to get a very unwelcome education. An exile has no clan, no protection, no right to sanctuary on any world we control, the elder continued. They cannot trade, cannot seek aid, cannot even speak their own names in public. They become ghosts wandering the void until starvation or pirates or simple despair claims them. Thyra, still kneeling, spoke without looking up. My sister was exiled 7 years ago for failing to protect her sworn charge. Her bones drift somewhere between the Gamma Nebula and the void reaches. The rain seemed to grow colder. Around the circle, Kai could see the other Vardoon watching him with a mixture of anticipation and disgust. Some of them clearly wanted him to refuse the bond claim to watch these warriors fall from grace. There has to be another way, Kai said desperately. Some other option that doesn't involve ownership or exile. Elder Corveth shook his head slowly. The old laws are absolute. They have governed our people for 3,000 years. Blood debt must be acknowledged or the fabric of our society unravels. He paused, studying Kai with those ancient eyes. Unless, of course, you wish to challenge the laws themselves. The way he said it made Kai's skin crawl. That path clearly led to even worse places. Velshara must have sensed his internal struggle because she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. Please, Terran, I have served my clan for 20 years. My battle sisters have families, children who depend on our honor. If we are exiled, she swallowed hard. If we are exiled, they suffer as well. Kai closed his eyes, feeling the weight of 6 lives settling on his shoulders. When he opened them again, Elder Corveth was still watching, waiting for his decision. If I accept this bond claim, Kai said carefully, what exactly does that mean? What are my obligations? You provide for their welfare. You protect their honor. You guide their actions in accordance with justice law. The elder's smile was razor thin. In exchange, they serve your will in all things, a fair arrangement by any measure. Fair, right. Kai looked at the kneeling women, these proud warriors reduced to supplicants by ancient law and his own desperate reflexes. Commander Velshara, who could probably command fleets and conquer worlds, waiting for his word like a servant. This was what happened when you tried to be the good guy in a universe that didn't always have good options. Fine. Kai said, the word tasting like ashes. I accept the bond claim, but understand this. He raised his voice so everyone could hear. These women are under my protection, not my ownership. They'll be treated with respect and dignity, and anyone who says otherwise can take it up with me personally. Elder Corveth nodded approvingly. Spoken like a true bondholder. The ritual is complete. He raised his staff and strange symbols flared to life along its length. By blood spilled and honor claimed by the old laws and the watching stars, I bind thee 6-1. Let none dispute this bond until death or lawful release sets you free. The symbols pulsed once, then faded. Around the circle, the watching Vardoon began to disperse, some looking, disappointed, others intrigued by this strange turn of events. Velshara and her warriors rose slowly, their movements careful and controlled. They looked at Kai with expressions he couldn't quite read. Gratitude, resentment, resignation. What happens now? Kai asked. Velshara straightened, some of her old authority returning. Now, bondholder, we serve. Well, where you go, we follow. What you command, we obey. She paused, then added quietly, what you become, we become. Standing there into the rain, surrounded by alien warriors bound to him by laws older than human civilization, Kai Mercer realized his life had just taken a very sharp turn into uncharted territory. And somehow he had the feeling this was just the beginning. The Drifter's Rest looked like exactly the kind of place where deals went bad and people disappeared. Built into an asteroid hollowed out decades ago by miners who'd struck out, it now served as a way station for smugglers, refugees, and anyone else who needed to lay low between the stars. Perfect for Kai's current situation. You've got to be kidding me, Sora Chen muttered as she watched 6-armed Vardoon warriors file into her establishment. The half-Chinese, half-Martian trader had been Kai's contact in the outer systems for 3 years, but she'd never seen him arrive with what looked like a personal army. It's complicated, Kai said, settling into a booth that groaned under the weight of Velshara's armor as she sat across from him. The other 5 warriors arranged themselves at nearby tables, their eyes constantly scanning for threats. Complicated doesn't begin to cover it. Sora poured herself a double shot of Rigelian whiskey. You were supposed to negotiate a mining contract, not start collecting alien wives. They're not wives, Kai protested, then caught Velshara's sharp look. I mean, they're warriors, elite guards. It's a bond debt thing. Right, bond debt. Sora's tone suggested she knew exactly what kind of bond debt involves 6 beautiful alien women following a human male around. And I suppose you had nothing to do with how this bond got formed. Kai was saved from answering by Thyra, who had apparently been listening to their conversation with the enhanced hearing that came with Vardoon battle modifications. The bondholder slew our champion in honorable combat, she said, her accent turning the words into something almost musical. His blade work was impressive. Thyra, Velshara's voice carried a warning. I speak only truth, Commander. Thyra replied, but she lowered her eyes respectfully. The subtle tension in that exchange told Kai more about their situation than an hour of explanation would have. Sora raised an eyebrow. Champion, you killed someone. It was self-defense, Kai said quickly. Sort of. There was a ritual challenge, and he divided the champion into 2 pieces with a single strike. Zara interrupted, her voice carrying a note of admiration that made Velshara's jaw tighten. The blade sang as it cut. I have never seen such precision. Zara, Velshara snapped. My apologies, Commander. But Zara didn't look particularly sorry. Kai was beginning to realize that his new companions had some very complicated feelings about their current situation. On one hand, they were bound by ancient law to serve him. On the other hand, they were elite warriors who just watched him casually dismember their champion in a matter of seconds. It was like being followed around by a pack of very deadly, very confused wolves. Look, Sora said, pouring drinks for everyone. I don't know what kind of interstellar soap opera you've gotten yourself into, but you can't stay here long. Word travels fast in the outer systems, and if someone put a bounty on your head, who would put a bounty on my head? Kai asked. I'm a diplomat. You're a diplomat who just humiliated one of the most powerful war clans in the sector, Sora pointed out. There are probably a dozen people who'd pay good money to see you disappear quietly. As if summoned by her words, the tavern's door chimed, and 3 figures in traveling cloaks entered. They moved with the careful precision of professionals, their eyes sweeping the room before settling on Kai's table. Instantly, the 5 guards were on their feet, hands moving to weapons. Velshara remained seated, but her posture shifted subtly, ready to explode into motion. Easy, Kai said quietly. Let's see what they want first. The lead figure approached their table, pulling back his hood to reveal the scarred face of a Vardoon male. His armor bore the markings of a different clan, and his smile was nothing but teeth. Commander Velshara, he said, his voice carrying mock respect. How diminished you appear. Captain Vorthak, Velshara replied coolly, still scraping the bottom of the honor barrel. I see. Such words from one who kneels to alien scum. Vorthak's eyes shifted to Kai. You must be the human who thinks he can own our women. Before Kai could respond, Nyx had moved. The youngest of the guards appeared beside Vorthak, as if by magic, her hand resting lightly on his throat. Her claws, Kai noticed, were razor-sharp and perfectly positioned. You will address the bondholder with respect, she said softly, or you will address no one at all. The tavern had gone completely silent. Even the background music had stopped. Sora's hand was under the bar, probably on the controls for the emergency lockdown. Nyx, Kai said carefully, step back. She looked at him, confusion flickering in her eyes. Bondholder, this creature has insulted you. Honor demands that you follow my orders, Kai interrupted, and I'm ordering you to step back. For a moment, Nyx didn't move. Then reluctantly, she withdrew her hand and returned to her position. Vorthak rubbed his throat and his expression unreadable. Interesting, he said. The human shows restraint. Perhaps there's hope for him yet. What do you want, Vorthak? Velshara asked. What I want is to see justice done, he replied. The Velshara bloodline has served with honor for centuries. To see it reduced to this, it pains me. Get to the point, Kai said. Vorthak's smile widened. The point in human is that there are those who would see Commander Velshara restored to her rightful place, free from the chains of this ridiculous bond debt. And what would that cost? Velshara asked, though her tone suggested she already knew. Your bondholder's life, of course. Nothing personal, Vorthak added, looking at Kai, but the old laws are quite clear. If the bondholder dies by treachery or mischance, the debt is void. The warriors return to their clans with honor intact. The silence stretched out like a blade. Around the tavern, other patrons were quietly moving toward the exits. This was about to get very messy very quickly. Counteroffer, Casey, Kai said calmly. You and your friends walk out of here right now, and I don't let my companions demonstrate why they're called elite guards. Vorthak laughed. 5 warriors against 30. Those are poor odds even for the legendary Velshara unit. 30 bomb. Kai looked around the tavern with new eyes. The remaining patrons weren't trying to leave. They were positioning themselves. He'd walked into a trap. You're outnumbered, outgunned, and out of options, Vorthak continued. Surrender now and your death will be quick. Resist and... He never finished the sentence. Kiara's throwing knife sprouted from his shoulder, spinning him around. In the same instant, the lights went out. What followed was controlled chaos. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness like strobing lightning. Vardoon war cries mixed with human curses and the distinctive whine of energy weapons. Furniture exploded into splinters as combatants dove for cover. Kai found himself pressed against an overturned table with Velshara beside him, her plasma rifle spitting death at shapes moving in the darkness. This is why I hate diplomatic missions, he muttered, checking his sidearm. You call this diplomacy? Velshara asked, pausing to reload. Hey, I tried talking first. A grenade landed near their position, and Velshara tackled Kai, rolling them both behind the bar as the explosion shredded their previous cover. They ended up in a tangle of limbs, her armor pressed against his chest, her amber eyes wide in the flickering emergency lighting. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Velshara's expression shuddered, and she pulled away. We need to move, she said, all business again. Thera's covering the back exit. If we can reach the docking bay. What about Sora? Your friend escaped through the service tunnels when the shooting started. She's smarter than she looks. A pulse rifle beam sizzled overhead, and Kai decided that survival trumped curiosity. They low-crawled toward the rear of the tavern, where Thyra was methodically picking off attackers with a sniper rifle that looked like it could punch through starship armor. 5 hostiles remaining, she reported, without taking her eye from the scope. But more are coming. We have perhaps 2 minutes before they seal the docking bay. Then we'd better move fast, Kai said. They made it to the back corridor just as the front of the tavern erupted in another explosion. Behind them, Zara and Vera were laying down covering fire while Nyx and Kiara leapfrogged between positions like deadly ghosts. Why are they doing this? Kai asked as they ran toward the docking bay. Why risk their lives for someone they barely know? Velshara glanced at him, something unreadable in her expression. Because you're not what we expected, bondholder. You could have let Vorthak kill us. It would have solved your problem cleanly. That's not who I am. No, she said quietly. It's not. They reached Kai's shuttle just as the docking bay alarms began blaring. Behind them, the rest of the team appeared moving in perfect formation despite the chaos they just escaped. Everyone aboard, Kai called, hitting the engine preheat. We're leaving, now. As the shuttle lifted off, Kai caught a glimpse of Sora watching from a concealed observation port. She raised her hand in a farewell salute, then disappeared back into the shadows. Where to now, bondholder? Velshara asked, settling into the co-pilot's seat. Kai plotted a course toward the rim territories away from Vardoon space and the complications that came with it. But as he watched his passengers in the shuttle's main compartment, he realized that the complications were already aboard. Thyra was cleaning her rifle with the focused attention of a true professional. Zara was examining the knife wound on her arm with clinical interest. Nyx was staring out the viewport with the expression of someone seeing the universe with new eyes. And Velshara was watching him with a mixture of respect, confusion, and something else he couldn't quite identify. Somewhere safe, he said finally. Somewhere we can figure out what comes next. But as the stars wheeled past the viewport, Kai had the growing suspicion that safe was going to be a relative term from now on. The abandoned mining station on Kepler 442c wasn't much to look at, but it had three things going for it. It was off the shipping lanes, it had functional life support, and nobody would think to look for them there. After the ambush at the Drifter's Rest, those qualities made it feel like paradise. Kai was reviewing star charts in what used to be the station commander's office when Velshara appeared in the doorway. She changed out of her battle armor into something that looked almost civilian, though the weapons harness across her shoulders suggested she wasn't exactly relaxed. We need to talk, she said without preamble. About what happened at the tavern. Your people did good work. We're all alive, and that's what matters. Not about the tavern. Velshara entered the room and sealed the door behind her. About what comes next. Kai set down his datapad and really looked at her for the first time since they'd arrived. There was something different in her posture, a tension that hadn't been there before. I'm listening. The bond debt we carry, she began, then stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. It's not complete. What do you mean, not complete? Velshara moved to the window, staring out at the red dwarf star that barely illuminated this forgotten corner of space. The ceremony at the Citadel was just the first step, the formal acknowledgement. But for the bond to be truly recognized, for it to carry weight in Vardoon space, there must be more. Something in her tone made Kai's stomach drop. What kind of more? A recognition ritual, an intimate ceremony that binds the bondholder to his companions on a deeper level. She turned to face him, her amber eyes reflecting the starlight. Without it, any Vardoon clan leader can challenge the legitimacy of our bond. They can declare it void and take us back. Back to exile, you mean? Or worse. Some of the more traditional clans view incomplete bonding as a form of spiritual contamination. The penalty for that is, she swallowed hard, death. Kai stood up so quickly his chair toppled over. Death, are you serious? Deadly serious, and word of our situation is already spreading. Captain Vorthak's attack wasn't just opportunism. He was testing us, seeing if our bond was strong enough to be worth respecting. Her voice grew quiet. We failed that test. We survived. All of us. We survived because you showed mercy and tactical intelligence. But we didn't fight as a bonded unit. We fought as individuals following a stranger's orders. Velshara's hands clenched at her sides. The difference is noticeable to those who know what to look for. Kai ran his hands through his hair, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders again. Okay, so what does this recognition ritual involve? Please tell me it doesn't require me to fight another champion. No champions, Velshara said, and for the first time since he'd known her, she seemed almost embarrassed. The ritual is personal, intimate. It creates a psychic and emotional link between the bondholder and his companions. Psychic link, a sharing of thoughts, emotions, combat instincts. It allows perfect coordination in battle, complete trust in all situations. She paused. It also reveals the true nature of all participants. There can be no lies, no hidden agendas, no deception. That didn't sound so bad, actually. Kai had been wondering about the motivations and loyalty of his unexpected companions. A little honesty might be refreshing. What's the catch, Whitey asked. The ritual requires, Velshara took a deep breath, physical contact, sustained intimate contact while the psychic barriers are lowered, and it must be performed with all bond members simultaneously. Kai felt his face grow hot. All of them at the same time. The bond is collective, not individual. It encompasses the entire unit. Velshara's voice was carefully neutral. I know this is not the way of your people, but without the recognition ritual, we are vulnerable. Not just to external threats, but to internal discord. The bond debt creates obligations, but not trust. That must be earned through the ritual. Before Kai could respond, the door chimed. Thera's voice came through the comm. Commander, you're needed in the common area. There's been a development. Velshara and Kai exchanged glances, then hurried out of the office. In the station's main living area, they found the other 4 warriors gathered around a holographic display showing news feeds from across Verdun space. What's the situation? Velshara asked. Elder Korveth has issued a formal statement. Zara reported, her usual composure cracked. About our bond debt. The hologram shifted to show the ancient Vardun standing before the clan assembly. His words were translated into standard, but the contempt in his voice needed no interpretation. The human known as Kai Mercer has claimed bond right over the Velshara battle unit through combat victory. However, reports suggest this bond remains unconsummated, existing only in legal technicality rather than spiritual truth. Kai's blood ran cold. Unconsummated. Therefore, the elder continued. Any clan leader who wishes to challenge this fraudulent claim may do so with the full backing of the assembly. The Velshara unit will be returned to proper Vardun authority, and the pretender will face judgment for his presumption. The hologram flickered off, leaving them in stunned silence. How many clan leaders have ships in this sector? Kai asked quietly. At least 6, Nix replied, and they're all moving toward the outer rim, hunting us. How long do we have? 12 hours, maybe less, Vera said. They're coordinating the search grid. Soon there won't be anywhere to run. Kai looked around the circle of faces, seeing the same desperate determination in each one. They were elite warriors, but even they couldn't fight an entire fleet. The recognition ritual, he said. If we perform it, will that stop them? If performed correctly, yes, Velshara replied. A fully consummated bond debt cannot be challenged by any authority short of the High Clan Council, and they haven't convened in over a century. Then we do it. Velshara's voice was soft. You don't understand what you're agreeing to. The ritual creates permanent bonds. What you feel, we feel. What we experience, you experience. There's no going back. And if we don't do it, you all die. Yes. Then there's no choice. Kai looked at each of the warriors in turn. I won't let that happen. Thyra stepped forward. The ritual requires preparation, sacred elements, proper positioning, mental conditioning, and she hesitated. An artifact to focus the psychic energies. What kind of artifact? Velshara reached into her armor and withdrew something that made Kai's breath catch. It was a crystal, roughly the size of his fist, that seemed to contain a miniature star. Light swirled within its depths, pulsing with the rhythm that matched his heartbeat. The Ember Core, she said. It's been in my family for 17 generations, a relic from the first days of our civilization. It's beautiful. It's also dangerous. The core responds to strong emotions, to deep connections between minds. During the recognition ritual, it amplifies everything, every feeling, every thought, every sensation. Her amber eyes met his. There have been bondholders who went mad from the intensity. And others achieved perfect unity with their companions. They became legends. Kai reached out and touched the crystal. The moment his fingers made contact, it flared with brilliant light. Heat raced up his arm, not painful but intense, like touching the surface of a star. Around him, the 5 warriors gasped simultaneously. Their eyes widened, pupils dilating as if they were seeing something incredible. "By the burning stars," Thyra whispered. "It's responding to him." "That's impossible," Zara breathed. "The core only responds to Vardoon bloodlines." Velshara stared at the crystal, then at Kai. In 3,000 years of recorded history, no non-Vardoon has ever made the Ember Core react. Not once. The crystal pulsed brighter, and Kai felt something stirring in the back of his mind. Whispers of thought that weren't his own. Flashes of emotion colored by alien experiences. For just a moment, he could feel what they felt, see what they saw. He was looking at himself through 5 pairs of eyes, and what he saw surprised him. Not the reluctant diplomat he thought himself to be, but someone strong, protective, worthy of the loyalty they offered. "We need to begin the ritual," Velshara said, her voice hushed. "The core has chosen you. To delay now would be to waste a gift that may never come again. What do I need to do?" "Trust us," she said simply, "and let us trust you." An hour later, they had prepared the ritual space in the station's largest compartment. Candles that burned with colored flames marked the cardinal directions. Symbols had been drawn on the floor in what looked like silver paint, but felt warm to the touch. The Ember Core sat in the center of it all, pulsing with that inner light. The 5 warriors had changed into ceremonial robes that left their shoulders and arms a bare, intricate tattoos visible in the candlelight. Kai wore similar robes, feeling more exposed than he'd ever been in his life. "The ritual has 3 phases," Velshara explained, as they formed a circle around the core. "Recognition, where we acknowledge each other's true nature. Acceptance, where we choose to be bound despite our flaws. And union, where the bonds are sealed permanently. And if someone changes their mind halfway through, the ritual cannot be stopped once begun. The core will ensure completion one way or another." She knelt and placed her hands on the crystal. "Are you ready?" Kai looked around the circle one more time. Thyra fierce and loyal, Zara sharp and intelligent, Kiara young but deadly, Nyx quiet but observant, Vera strong and dependable, and Velshara proud and complex and trying so hard to hide her vulnerability. "I'm ready." One by one they placed their hands on the Ember Core. The moment the last hand touched the crystal, it exploded with light that seemed to come from everywhere at once. And then Kai wasn't himself anymore. He was 6 people feeling 6 sets of emotions, thinking 6 different thoughts. The boundaries between minds dissolved like sugar and water, leaving only pure connection. He felt Thyra's fierce protectiveness, her determination to never let her battle sisters down again. Zara's brilliant tactical mind, constantly analyzing threats and solutions. Kiara's youthful enthusiasm, tempered by the weight of taking lives. Nyx's quiet wisdom, older than her years. Vera's unshakable loyalty, like bedrock beneath stormy seas. In Velshara was a symphony of contradictions. Pride and vulnerability, strength and fear. Leadership and the desperate need to be led. She had carried the weight of her people's expectations for so long that she'd forgotten how to be anything but strong. But underneath it all, in all of them, he felt something that took his breath away. Not just respect or loyalty or even gratitude. Something deeper, warmer, more complex. They were falling in love with him, all of them in their own ways. And to his amazement, he realized he was falling in love with them too. The Ember Core pulsed once more, sealing the bonds forever. When the light faded, they were still 6 separate people. But now they were also something more, something new. A family, a unit, a bond that death itself couldn't break. "It is done," Velshara whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We are complete." Outside the station, alarms began blaring. The hunting fleet had found them. But for the first time since this all began, Kai wasn't afraid. He could feel his companions' minds touching his, their strength flowing into him just as his flowed into them. "Let them come," he thought, and 5 voices answered in perfect harmony. "We're ready." The lead ship materialized out of hyperspace like a metal leviathan, its hull scarred by a dozen campaigns. Kai felt his companion's recognition through the bond. Before the sensor readings confirmed it, the Bloodhammer flagship of General Vornak's personal fleet. "He came himself," Velshara whispered, her mental voice carrying a mix of dread and old pain. "I didn't think he would risk it." Through their shared connection, Kai felt the weight of history between them. Vornak hadn't just been Velshara's betrothed, he'd been her mentor, her partner, the one person she'd trusted completely, until ambition had poisoned everything between them. Incoming transmission, Thyra reported from the comm station. He's demanding to speak with you personally. Kai nodded the bond, allowing him to feel his companion's steady presence like armor around his soul. Put him through. The holographic projector flickered to life, revealing a figure that commanded attention even through static. General Vornak was everything Kai had expected and more. Tall, powerfully built, with the kind of presence that filled rooms and bent wills. His ceremonial armor bore the marks of high rank, and his eyes held the cold calculation of someone who'd climbed to power over the bodies of his enemies. So, Vornak said, his voice carrying the authority of absolute command, "You are the human who thinks he can steal what belongs to me." "I didn't steal anything," Kai replied calmly. "I won a legitimate challenge under your own laws." "Legitimate?" Vornak's laugh was like breaking glass. "You killed a champion through trickery, then seduced 6 warriors with alien magic. That's not victory, human. That's theft." "The Ember Corps chose him." Velshara stepped into view, her chin raised in defiance. "Something it never did for you, despite all your efforts." Vornak's expression darkened. "Velshara, still clinging to your pet human, I see. Have you forgotten everything I taught you about honor? About duty to your people?" "I remember everything you taught me," she replied, ice in her voice, "including how quickly you abandoned honor when it stood between you and power." "Power serves the greater good," Vornak shot back, "something you were too naive to understand then, and apparently still are now." Through the bond, Kai felt the complex emotions this exchange stirred in his companions. Old loyalties warring with new bonds, respect for what Vornak had once been fighting with, revulsion for what he'd become. "Enough," Kai interrupted. "What do you want, General?" "What I want is to restore order to chaos," Vornak replied. "You've disrupted the natural hierarchy of our people with your interference. Commanders bow to aliens. Sacred relics respond to foreign blood." His eyes narrowed. "Such perversions cannot be allowed to spread." "The bond is legitimate," Kai said, "witnessed by Elder Korveth himself." "Korveth is a relic clinging to traditions that no longer serve us," Vornak dismissed. "The future belongs to those strong enough to seize it, and you human are not strong enough." The transmission cut out, leaving them in tense silence. Almost immediately, the station's sensors detected multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. Vornak hadn't come alone. "Welcome vessels," Zara reported, my mental voice tight with tactical assessment. 6 heavy cruisers, 4 destroyers, and 2 assault carriers. We're outnumbered 50 to 1. "He's surrounding the system," Nix added, "cutting off all escape routes." Kai felt a moment of despair quickly suppressed as his companion's determination flooded through the bond. They'd faced impossible odds before. They'd do it again. "There's something else," Velshara said, her voice carrying a weight of long-held secrets. "Something you need to know about the Ember Core." She moved to the crystal still glowing softly in its protective case. "I told you it was a family heirloom 17 generations old." "That's true, but it's not the whole truth." "What aren't you telling me?" "The core isn't just a focusing crystal. It's a repository of memory, of knowledge of the collective consciousness of every Velshara who's ever bonded with it." Her hand hovered over the surface, not quite touching. "When it activated for you, it didn't just create a bond between us. It made you part of that lineage." Kai stared at the crystal, understanding dawning. "That's why Vornak wants it. It's not just about you or me. It's about what the core represents." "Legitimacy," Velshara confirmed. "The Velshara bloodline has ruled the outer territories for centuries. Whoever controls the core controls that legacy. And Vornak," she swallowed hard, "Vornak was never accepted by the core. No matter how we tried, no matter what rituals we performed, it remained inert for him. That's why he let you go," Kai realized. "When you broke the betrothal, he couldn't stop you without admitting the core had rejected him." "But now it's chosen an alien," Thyra said, her mental voice carrying wonder. "Something that should be impossible." "Unless," Kiara added quietly, "the core sees something in Kai that we're only beginning to understand." Before anyone could respond, the station's proximity alarms began screaming. On the main display, they could see that Vornak's fleet arranging itself in a perfect siege formation. Incoming transmission, Vera announced. Multiple sources. The holographic display split into several sections, each showing a different ship captain. But it wasn't Vornak's people. These were traders, smugglers, independent captains who'd somehow appeared in the system during the standoff, and leading them all was Sora Chen. Well, well, she said, her image crackling with transmission static. Looks like someone's having a party and forgot to invite the locals. Sora, Kai breathed relief flooding through the bond. How did you find you, please? I've been tracking your signature since you left the Drifter's Rest. Did you really think I'd let my best customer get himself killed without trying to profit from it? You came to help us, Velshara asked, suspicion clear in her voice. I came to make money, Sora corrected, but as it happens, helping you is the most profitable option available. Her smile was sharp as a blade. Vornak's been throwing his weight around demanding tribute from every independent operation in the sector. Bad for business, very bad. So you brought friends, Kai observed, counting the ships on his sensors. At least 20 vessels all armed and ready for trouble. I brought customers, Sora replied. People who've been waiting for someone to stand up to Vornak's protection racket. You've given them hope, Kai. Hope that someone can challenge the established order and win. We haven't won anything yet, Kai pointed out. Maybe not, but you've got something Vornak doesn't. What's that? People willing to fight for you instead of just obeying orders. Sora's expression grew serious. There's a difference, you know, loyalty earned versus loyalty commanded. As if summoned by her words, Vornak's image appeared on the main channel, his face a mask of rage. Mercenaries and pirates, he snarled. Is this the best you can do, human hide behind criminals and outcasts? I'm not hiding behind anyone, Kai replied. I'm standing with friends. Friends, Vornak's laugh was bitter. You've known these people for days. I've served with my warriors for decades. Which of us inspires true loyalty? Let's find out, Kai said quietly. Through the bond, he felt his companions' readiness, their absolute commitment to whatever came next. But he also felt something else, a stirring from the Ember core, as if it were awakening to some greater purpose. General Vornak, he continued, his voice carrying across the void between fleets. You want the core, you want to prove your legitimacy, then face me in single combat. Winner takes all. The silence that followed was deafening. Around them, both fleets held their positions, waiting for Vornak's response. You would challenge me, Vornak's voice carried disbelief. I am a general of the Vardoon Empire. I have commanded fleets, conquered worlds, broken rebellions. What are you but a diplomat with a lucky sword? I'm someone the core chose, Kai replied simply, and that terrifies you. Vornak's image flickered, and for a moment his mask of confidence slipped. In that instant, everyone watching could see the truth. He was afraid. Afraid of what Kai represented, afraid of what the core's choice meant for his own legitimacy. Very well, he said finally. Single combat, but not here, not in the void. On Kepler Station, where your treachery began, let the scene of your first crime be the scene of your last. Agreed, Kai said, even as his companion's alarm flooded through the bond. Kai, no, Velshara said urgently. He's not just a warrior. He's a master strategist, a veteran of 100 battles. This isn't like facing a champion in ritual combat. I know, Kai replied, but it's the only way to end this without everyone dying. You could die, Thyra pointed out. I could, he agreed, but I won't because I'm not fighting alone. Through the bond, he felt their understanding, their commitment, their absolute faith in him. The Ember core pulsed in response, its light growing brighter. 1 hour, Vornak declared. Prepare yourself, human. When this is over, the core will have a proper master, and these deluded women will remember their place. The transmission ended, leaving them in the silence of the void. Around them, 2 fleets prepared for battle, while in the depths of space, ancient powers stirred to life. The real fight was about to begin. The plan went to hell 30 seconds after they docked at Kepler Station. Kai had expected treachery. What he hadn't expected was the systematic way Vornak had turned their agreed-upon duel into an elaborate trap. The moment they stepped through the airlock, stun fields dropped 4 of his companions like stones. Only Thyra and Nyx remained standing there, enhanced reflexes getting them clear of the trap zones. But Velshara, Zara, Kiara, and Varal lay motionless on the deck, energy restraints flickering to life around their bodies. Predictable, Fornak's voice echoed through the station's speakers. I told you I was a strategist human. Did you think I'd risk everything on a simple sword fight? Through the bond, Kai could feel his fallen companion's consciousness dulled, but not extinguished. They were alive but helpless. The rage that filled him was unlike anything he'd ever experienced, magnified by the psychic connection, until it felt like molten metal in his veins. You gave your word, Kai snarled, drawing his blade. Single combat. I gave my word to a diplomat, Vornak replied. But you're not a diplomat anymore, are you? You're something else. Something that needs to be studied before it's destroyed. Emergency lights bathed the station in crimson as blast doors slammed shut, separating Kai from his captured companions. Through the reinforced windows, he could see Vardun's soldiers dragging the unconscious women toward the station's detention center. Thera Nix, he said through gritted teeth. Can you reach them? Negative. Thera reported her sniper rifle already scanning for targets. Too many guards, too much security. They're in the high security wing. Then we go through the guards. Kai Nix placed a hand on his arm. There are 40 soldiers between us and them. Even with the bond, we can't fight those odds. She was right and he knew it. But the alternative was leaving his people in Vornak's hands, and that wasn't happening. There's another way, Thyra said suddenly. The maintenance tunnels. I studied the station's schematics while we were planning. There's a service route that runs directly under the detention center. How long? 20 minutes to reach them. But Kai, she hesitated. The tunnels are designed for maintenance drones. They're barely wide enough and we're a human. I'll fit. And if you get stuck, then you'll have to cut me out. Kai checked his weapons and making sure everything was secure. What about getting them out once I reach them? Leave that to us, Nix said, her quiet voice carrying deadly promise. We'll create a distraction that'll make Vornak forget about his prisoners. An hour later, Kai was crawling through a maintenance shaft that smelled like machine oil and desperation. The tunnel was even tighter than Thyra had warned, forcing him to move by inches through spaces designed for equipment, not people. Through the bond, he could feel his captured companions' growing awareness as the stunner effects wore off. Velshara's consciousness was the strongest, her mind reaching out to his across the metal and stone that separated them. Kai, her mental voice was strained but clear. Don't come for us. It's a trap. I know, he replied through their connection. I'm coming anyway. He's not going to let you leave alive. The moment you show yourself, his soldiers will kill you. Probably. Then why? The question carried all of her frustration, her fear, her desperate desire to keep him safe. Because you're mine, he said simply. All of you, and I protect what's mine. Through the bond, he felt her emotional response to those words. Love, gratitude, and something deeper. The absolute certainty that she would die for him just as he was risking death for her. The Ember Core, she said suddenly. Kai, it's reacting to our separation. I can feel it from here. It's angry. That was when Kai noticed the warmth spreading through his chest. The core, still secured in his equipment pack, was pulsing with increasing intensity. Through the metal walls of the tunnel, he could feel its energy reaching out, searching for its bonded companions. What does that mean? I don't know. No one's ever been separated from the core after a full bonding. But if it's responding this strongly, her mental voice carried wonder and fear in equal measure. Kai, I think it's trying to bring us back together. The tunnel ended in a maintenance hatch that opened into a storage room adjacent to the detention center. Kai emerged like a ghost, his body protesting every movement after the cramped journey. Through the walls, he could hear voices, including one that made his blood freeze. Vornak was interrogating his prisoners personally. The core chose him, the general was saying, his voice carrying the edge of obsession. I need to know why. What makes a human worthy of such power when a proven leader of our people was rejected? Maybe, came Zara's voice, defiant despite her restraints. It's because the core recognizes a tyrant when it sees one. The sound of impact echoed through the walls, followed by Zara's sharp intake of breath. Careful, General. Velshara's voice was ice cold. Harm my battle sisters, and I'll show you why the core fears you. The core doesn't fear me, Vornak replied. It simply lacks the vision to see what our people could become under proper leadership. But perhaps if I studied its bond with the human, I could understand its requirements. You want to dissect him, Kiara said, her young voice carrying adult fury. I want to replicate him, Vornak corrected. Imagine a dozen humans bonded to Ember cores leading Vardoon battle groups across the galaxy. An empire of perfect unity, perfect obedience. Perfect slavery, Vera spat. Perfect order, Vornak countered. Something your pet human will never understand. That was when the lights went out. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red as explosions echoed through the station. Thyra and Nyx had begun their distraction, and from the sound of it, they were being very creative. In the confusion, Kai moved. The detention center's security door yielded to his lockpicks, a skill learned in his Marine days when diplomacy wasn't an option. He slipped through corridors filled with running soldiers, all heading toward the sounds of battle. The holding area was guarded by two soldiers who never saw him coming. He left them unconscious but alive, their weapons redistributed to better use. Kai, Velshara's voice was pure relief as he appeared in the doorway of their cell. Miss me? He asked, already working on their restraints. More than you know, she replied. And through the bond, he felt the depth of her feelings, not just relief, but something approaching worship. He'd come for them just as he'd promised. He'd risked everything to keep them safe. Where's Vornak? He asked as the last restraint fell away. Coordinating the defense, Zara reported, rubbing circulation back into her wrists. He thinks your friends are trying to take the whole station. Let him think that, Kai said, handing out the liberated weapons. We're getting out of here. What about the core? Velshara asked. Kai pulled the crystal from his pack, and immediately the entire room filled with brilliant light. The core was pulsing like a heartbeat, its inner fire brighter than he'd ever seen it. It's been calling to you, he said. I could feel it through the walls. The moment Velshara touched the crystal, it exploded with energy that made their previous bonding seem like a candle flame. Light poured from its surface, washing over all 5 women and connecting them to Kai with bonds that felt stronger than steel. But this time something was different. The connection wasn't just mental and emotional. Kai could feel changes in his body, enhancements that flowed through him like liquid fire. His reflexes sharpened his senses, expanded his physical capabilities, multiplied. Through the bond, he felt the same transformation occurring in his companions. They were becoming something more than human or Vardoon. They were becoming something new. By the burning stars, Velshara whispered, staring at her hands as energy crackled between her fingers. What's happening to us? Evolution, Kai replied, understanding flooding through him. The core isn't just a repository of memory. It's a catalyst. It's been waiting for the right combination, the right bond, to trigger the next step. The next step to what? To whatever we're meant to become. That's when Vornak found them. The general stood in the doorway of the detention center, his ceremonial armor scorched by battle. Behind him, a squad of his most elite warriors waited for orders, but Vornak only had eyes for the core blazing in Kai's hands. Impossible, he breathed. The energy readings are off the charts. What have you done? What you never could, Kai replied, standing to face him. I trusted it, I trusted them, and it responded. That power belongs to the Vardoon people, Vornak snarled, raising his weapon. I won't let an alien mongrel corrupt our greatest treasure. Then take it from me, Kai said calmly. What followed wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration of what the fully awakened core could do. Kai moved like liquid lightning, his enhanced reflexes making Vornak's attacks seem sluggish. But it wasn't just his speed that had changed. He could predict his opponent's moves, could see the patterns in his technique, could counter strategies before they were fully formed. Through the bond, his companions fed him information, tactical analysis, emotional support. He was fighting with the combined experience of 6 minds, the coordinated effort of 6 souls. Vornak's blade never touched him. In 30 seconds, the general was disarmed on his knees with Kai's weapon at his throat. Do it, Vornak said, his voice carrying a mixture of rage and respect. End this. Kai looked down at the man who'd terrorized his companions, who'd turned honor into tyranny, who'd tried to turn him into a weapon of oppression. It would be so easy to end it. One thrust and all their problems would be over. Instead, he lowered his blade. No, he said quietly, that's not who I am. That's not who we are. Through the bond, he felt his companion's surprise followed by understanding. They were better than their enemies. They chose mercy over vengeance, hope over fear. The core pulsed once more, and Kai felt its approval like warm sunlight. "You're free to go," he told Vornak. "Take your people and leave. But remember this, the age of tyranny is ending. The core has chosen its champions, and we won't let anyone suffer under the old ways again." Vornak stood slowly, his expression unreadable. "This isn't over, human." "Yes," Kai said, the core blazing in his hands. "It is." As Vornak and his forces withdrew, Kai turned to his companions. They were looking at him with expressions of wonder, love, and something approaching awe. "What happens now?" Velshar asked. Kai felt the core's warmth, felt the bond connecting him to 6 incredible souls, felt the future spreading out before them like an endless sky. "Now," he said, "we change everything." 3 weeks later, Kai stood on the observation deck of the Harmony, watching the stars wheel past as they traveled toward the frontier territories. The ship was a gift from Sora, part of her payment for services rendered in breaking Vornak's protection racket. It wasn't the largest vessel in the fleet, but it was fast, well-armed, and most importantly, it was theirs. Behind him, he could hear the sounds of his family settling into their new life. Thera was in the armory, methodically cleaning weapons that would probably never need cleaning. Zara was at the navigation station, plotting courses to worlds that had never appeared on any official star chart. Kira was in the galley, attempting to cook human food with distinctly mixed results. And Velshara? Velshara was in the medical bay, staring at a scanner readout that had changed everything. Kai, her mental voice reached him through the bond, carrying a mixture of wonder and fear. "You need to see this." He found her sitting on the examination table, her hand pressed to her stomach. The scanner display showed what looked like a constellation of lights pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. "Is that?" he began. "Our child," she confirmed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Conceived during the recognition ritual when the core bonded us completely." She looked up at him, then in amber eyes bright with unshed tears. "The medical scanner can barely make sense of the readings. It's like nothing that's ever existed before." Through the bomb, Kai felt the awe radiating from the other women as they sensed what was happening. This wasn't just a pregnancy. This was the birth of something entirely new. "Human and Vardoon genetic markers are completely integrated." Velshara continued reading from the display. "But there's something else. Energy patterns that match the Ember Core's resonance. It's like the crystal itself is part of the child's development." Kai sat beside her, placing his hand over hers. "Inisha." The moment they touched, he felt it too, a presence small but incredibly bright growing within her, and surrounding that presence the familiar warmth of the core's energy. "Are you afraid?" he asked. "Terrified," she admitted. "This child will be the first of its kind. We don't know what it will become, what it will be capable of." She leaned against him, drawing strength from their bond, but also hopeful. "This is what the core has been waiting for, isn't it? The next step in evolution." "Our next step," Kai corrected, feeling the truth of it through their connection. "All of ours." Over the following days, word of Velshara's pregnancy spread through their small community like wildfire. The crew of independent ships that had allied with them during the confrontation with Vornak saw it as a symbol of hope. The first generation of a new era where the barriers between species could be overcome. But it was the reaction of his other companions that touched Kai most deeply. "I felt it the moment conception occurred," Nix confessed as they sat together in the ship's common area. "Through the bond, we all did. It was like a star being born." "Will there be others?" Kiara asked, her young face serious. "Other children, I mean. From all of us." Kai felt the question resonate through the bond, touching each of his companions. It was something they'd all wondered about, but hadn't dared to voice. "I don't know," he said honestly. "The core seems to respond to our deepest needs, our strongest connections. If it happens, it'll be because it's meant to." "And if it doesn't," Vera asked, "then we'll be the best family we can be, exactly as we are." That evening, as they prepared for sleep in the quarters they'd all come to share, Kai found himself thinking about how far they'd traveled, not just in space, but in understanding. When this had all started, he'd been a reluctant diplomat trying to solve a mining dispute. Now he was something else entirely. A bondholder, a catalyst for change, the father of a child that would reshape the galaxy's future. "Do you regret it?" Velshara asked, sensing his thoughts through their connection. "Everything that's happened. Kai looked around the room at 5 incredible women who'd become his partners, his companions, his family. Each one had given up everything they'd known to follow a path none of them fully understood. Never, he said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. Even though we'll probably never have a normal life, Thyra added from where she was checking the door locks for the 3rd time. Even though half the galaxy thinks we're either heroes or abominations, Zara chimed in. Even though we're raising a child that might be more powerful than all of us combined, Kiara finished. Kai pulled them all closer, feeling their warmth, their love, their absolute commitment to each other through the bond that connected them. Especially because of all that, he said, we're writing a new story, not just for us, but for everyone who comes after. As they settled into sleep, the Ember Core pulsed softly from its place of honor in their quarters. Its light had become a constant presence in their lives, so a reminder of the bonds that held them together and the future they were building. But tonight, something was different. As Kai drifted towards sleep, he felt the core's energy reaching out beyond their ship, beyond their system, touching something vast and distant. Through the bond, his companions felt it too. "What is it?" Velshara whispered. Kai opened his eyes and looked at the crystal. Its inner light was brighter than he had ever seen, pulsing with a rhythm that seemed to match the heartbeat of the unborn child. "I think," he said, slowly, "it's calling to others. Other cores, other people, other bonds waiting to be formed." He sat up, understanding flooding through him. "We're not the end of this. We're the beginning." Through the viewport, the stars seemed to pulse in response to the core's energy. Somewhere out there, other lives were about to change. Other families were about to be born. Other bonds were waiting to transform the galaxy. The Ember Core flared once more, and in that light, Kai saw glimpses of the future. Ships traveling between worlds that had never known peace. Children playing in gardens where humans and aliens lived as equals. Warriors laying down their weapons because they'd found something worth protecting instead of conquering. It was a future worth fighting for, worth living for, worth becoming something more than human for. "What do we do now?" Velshara asked, her hand resting on her growing belly. Kai looked at his family, at the core that had brought them together, at the stars that held infinite possibilities. "Now we have my dip," he said. "We go home." "Home?" Thyra questioned. "Where's home for people like us?" Kai smiled, feeling the answer resonate through all their hearts simultaneously. "Wherever we are together," he said. "That's home." The Ember Core pulsed one final time, its light washing over them like a blessing. In that moment, they were complete, not just as individuals, but as something greater. A family forged in conflict, bonded by trust, united by love. And in the growing life within Velshara, the promise of a future where such bonds would reshape the very meaning of what it meant to be alive in the universe. The stars watched and waited and welcomed them home. And that's how one human's mercy became the foundation of a new age. But this is just the beginning of Kai and his family's journey across the stars. If you enjoyed this story of bonds that transcend species and love that defies the impossible, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. There are more epic sci-fi tales waiting, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens when humanity meets the universe on equal terms. Until next time, keep looking up at the stars.